Good morning, everyone. We're just going to take a moment to make sure we can be heard in the Zoom webinar.
Yes, we're hearing you well in Zoom, Sam. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So, Chair, we will be ready to begin when you are.
Okay, there we go. Good morning. Welcome to the July 25th meeting for the Lake County Board of Supervisors. We will call this meeting to order and begin with a moment of silence.
So I have a moment of silence for Jasmine Ray Dove Myers. She passed in June, on June 21st. She's survived by her mother and father, siblings, relatives, and friends. The service was already held, but I wanted to make sure that I did a moment of silence for Jasmine. She went to Upper Lake, graduated from Upper Lake. Gone too fast.
California, can you lead us in the pledge, please? Do we have any extra items not appearing on the agenda?
We have none.
Okay, we'll move on to consent. Do we have any items on the consent agenda that anyone would like to pull? Supervisor Sabatier?
Yes, I'd like to pull item 5.2 for clarification, please.
Any items from the public? Not seeing anyone in the chambers, and I will look. And not seeing anyone in.
Madam Chair, if you mind, I just saw a hand raised. This is to pull items from the consent agenda if you're here for public comment.
Yeah, so we're not there yet. Okay.
Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I move to approve the consent agenda as offered, with the exception of 5.2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, consent is approved. Our 9:06 a.m. item, 6.1, public input. If you've got input that you would like to give, you may come up to the podium. You'll have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, thank you for having me here today. I came here about 3.5 months ago talking about building positive communities with students through project-based learning. So I'm having a meet and greet this Thursday, the 27th, from 9 to 9:45 at Hoburg Point, Vista Point. And it just basically in one paragraph, this meeting will present an educational paradigm focusing on the power of young people to direct community development in a positive direction. This form of education will equip students with life skills inherited from brilliant minds, both locally and internationally, dedicated to passing on their legacy of challenge-solving knowledge. The focus of this group of students will be to promote and protect the California ecological systems and the small farmer. In addition to this, there will be a social component of working with politicians and civic leaders to come up with solutions to homelessness. It would be an honor to have you attend, to give input, help to support, and ask questions about how this group of students can help make California a brighter and happier place to live through thriving communities. So I'll just leave a few of these invitations right here. So thank you.
Great, thank you.
Did she say her name?
Elaine Brown, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Yolanda Chavez. Thank you for having me. Just really needed some clarity around, reporting hazards and things like that. So how do the Lake County Supervisors work with AT&T and PG&E around fire prevention? On Highway 20 between Sulphur Bank Road to Highway 20Y at Highway 53 on the right side, are many AT&T wires entangled, embedded in the trees. The poles in these areas are owned by PG&E and the wires are AT&T. When calling AT&T, we are unable to reach risk management. The numbers given were not connecting to risk management. The emails given also didn't allow anyone to report a fire hazard. So if I can't get through, neither can any of the regular citizens in Lake County, and that's for AT&T. How does the board work with AT&T and PG&E around fire hazards and the prevention of fires? If we cannot report hazards that need to be reviewed by someone for fire danger, then that could be a real issue. PG&E has only done a couple of miles of underground electronic construction in about 5 years. Do we work with PG&E to help with them prioritize where to begin the underground electric construction? Does the public have the right to input what the priorities are in our community? Is this facilitated through this board? We are in a global warming. How do we push for getting this work done in our community? Does the board regularly review areas around Lake County for fire hazards or work with our fire department to do this? Do you also review reports on fire hazards that are reported, and are they given to you to review? Who ensures completion in Lake County? We pay the property taxes and any other taxes given to us in Lake County. We'd like answers and to know the processes because, you know, we really don't. And maybe we just need to understand them. So I'm leaving this with my phone number and email address so you can contact me and maybe update me on where to go. Thank you very much.
Okay, so during public input, it's not a time for us to have a conversation because it's not on the agenda, but I encourage you to
she's in
reach
my
out to your.
district.
Okay, there's an incredible amount of work that's happening in response to a lot of your questions. I'm going to pass this down to your supervisor and you can have a conversation with him and he can point you in the right direction.
I've gotten a lot of her calls and I've forwarded them. We've been playing a lot of phone tag.
Okay, great. All right, next.
Michael Wegner, thanks for hearing me today. So I just wanted to bring forward something I think is pertinent and something that has been roughly touched on when we talk about economic development and economic sustainability. In my mind, that really comes down to small local business and especially the small farmer. When I went to fill out an agriculturally exempt permit application for myself because I want to start a small farm. And I got 3 acres that are rural residential, so it's zoned properly. The application itself, the first item on it says the property has to be 10 acres or more. So that stipulation, that requirement to have 10 acres or more really allows for the big farms or land barons to be able to have a lower cost than the small farms. To subjugate out anybody who does fall within the zoning as required seems unfair and maybe not even in coinciding with all the conversations that we've had about farms and small farms. So I would hope and ask that you guys take a look at the requirements for agriculturally exempt buildings and consider changing the 10-acre requirement and look more at just the zoning itself for the requirements for those type of buildings, so we don't put undue stress on small farms. When we have one big farmer or one big farming operation, if they go under or stop, operations, period, then if, the infrastructure starts to fall apart. But when we have an area that is being supportive of small local farms, if one company goes down or one farm goes down, we still have the wealth of the other small farms that are all now working together. So I think to support economic sustainability and infrastructure itself, we should really support the small farmers who are trying to participate. Thank you.
And I just have a question. Have you reached out to the Farm Bureau or our?
I have tried to contact the Farm Bureau a number of times.
Okay.
with how the area works. If you're a big farm, you get noticed. If you're a small farmer, they'll get to you when they can.
And the agricultural commissioner?
I've already spoke with Catherine, and she has no, her job is to help the agricultural community, but at the same time to stay in following with the rules of the county. So she can't go against the county's ordinance or rules that require the 10 acres.
Okay, and you're in District 4, and you can,
You know what, Jessica, I'm sorry, I moved and I'm now in District 5 with,
5 or
no,
4?
4. I'm with Mr. Green.
Okay,
You guys changed the lines a little bit, so.
yeah, so you can check the map on
Uh-huh.
our GIS, find out exactly where you are, and reach out to either of us, and
Okay.
maybe we can start with that.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else with public input? I'm not seeing any hands in the Zoom room. We'll close this item, and we will,
Pet of the week.
yeah, we do not have a pet of the week, unfortunately, this week. So we will go on to 6.3, 9:08 a.m., presentation of proclamation commending Lynn Prescott for his 25 years of service to the County of Lake, and Supervisor Spatier is presenting.
Special districts, do you want to be up here?
Come on up, all the way up,
All the way up.
all the way up.
Don't be shy. All the way up. All the way up. All right. So a lot of times we talk about how we struggle to hire people, find people to take positions, and then we have the complete opposite, where at times we get to celebrate a massive amount of years dedicated to serving the people of Lake County, and this is one of those moments. So thank you for your service for 23 years. Today, the Board of Supervisors, there's a proclamation commending Lynn Prescott for his 23 years of service to the County of Lake. Whereas Lynn Prescott applied for a position with the County of Lake as a utility worker 1 in November of 2000 and was hired in that capacity in March of 2001. And whereas he quickly and consistently demonstrated a strong work ethic, exceptional knowledge, and leadership qualities, always receiving above average and outstanding performance reviews, and proving himself an ideal candidate for promotional opportunities within the department throughout his career. And whereas Lynn Prescott promoted to Utility Worker 2 on April of 2002, and whereas Lynn Prescott promoted to Utility Worker 3, taking on the responsibilities of a foreman in November of 2002. Whereas, while serving as Utility Worker 3, Lynn Prescott took initiative and successfully acquired his collection system operator certificate in 2009, above and beyond any department or state requirements. And whereas, Lynn Prescott was promoted to Utility Area Superintendent in February 2013 and has brought outstanding skill, creative insight and solutions, as well as a strong commitment to public service in this role for the last decade. And whereas over the span of his career with Lake County, Lynn also served as a staff sergeant in the Army and was deployed to sea combat on 3 occasions, courageously serving his country. And whereas Lynn Prescott has been a productive and inspiring leader to countless coworkers and staff over his remarkable period of service with the County of Lake, and he has diligently trained and imparted knowledge to others within his organization in order to continue the high standard he has worked hard to cultivate. And whereas staff, colleagues, and the broader public will greater miss Lynn Prescott and his tremendous contributions within the water and sewer districts he has served. And whereas Lynn Prescott has announced his intention to retire on July 31st, 2023. And now therefore be it proclaimed that the Board of Supervisors of the County of Lake hereby recognizes and commends Lynn Prescott for his 23 years of outstanding and dedicated service to the County of Lake and the Special Districts Department, and we wish him good health and much happiness during his retirement. Adopted this day, the 25th day of July, 2023. We're not done yet. Oh, would you like to say any words?
Oh, no, I'm good.
I'll ask Scott if you have any words. We're not done talking about you.
Yeah, we're going to embarrass you for just a little bit longer. I'm Scott Harder, Special Districts Administrator. I hired on with Special Districts about 9 years ago. I've been Lynn's supervisor for that entire time. I started out as the deputy administrator, and he was a direct report to me. Everything in that proclamation is true. He's been an incredible asset. He's a wonderful employee, hardworking, diligent. He always sees things from a different perspective. He's got this real creative way to come up with solutions that no one else would see. Tremendous asset to us. He's no nonsense. You can probably tell that. He's wanting to get back to work. He's not wanting to be up here. And, you know, that just speaks to his character. He's been a great mentor for the new employees that we hire. Doesn't put up with any BS, gets the work done. We are sad to see him go. But we are happy that he's headed into retirement and looking forward to those years ahead of him. So.
Public comment on this item? I see he has friends and colleagues. Just wondering, this is the moment to embarrass.
Hi, I'm Jan Coppinger. I was the former Special Districts Administrator, and I worked with Lynn for about 12 years, except for the time he was deployed. And that proclamation says everything about why I loved him as an employee. I want to talk about his character. One of the things I loved the most about him is he was always humble, so polite. He reminded me of a Southern gentleman, but he took no crap. And when things needed to get done, that man got them done. He was a power to be reckoned with, and I just always admired that. And Lynn, I loved being your boss. So.
Thank you, Jan.
Anyone else?
Well, we thank you for all your years of service. It's been a pleasure getting to know you through this proclamation. We haven't met personally, but thank you so much and enjoy your retirement.
I'll say one last thing, because I have to highlight this. Being a good worker is one thing, but having the motivations to go above and beyond is another. Doing the tasks that you're told that this is what needs to happen during the day, continuing your education when it's not absolutely necessary for the job, speaks to your personal motivations as a person who wants to grow and develop themselves. Serving your country during that time period as well shows you want to grow, you want to do something more for your community. I hope that you have rubbed off on many others. You're an inspiration. That's what we want to see in our community, and thank you for being a part of the County of Lake. Really appreciate it.
Okay. Do you want to open up your proclamation? Thank you. Oh, great. Sure. Let's just get one more just in case. Great. True. Thank you.
Okay, our next item is 6.4, 9:20 a.m. Still on Texas time, apparently. Consideration of a request for assistance under the California Disaster Assistance Act, CDAA, to mitigate pervasive tree mortality, including a memo, hazard tree removal plan, HTRP, and letter requesting waiver of 25% local match requirement. And this is brought to us by our administrative office. We've got Matthew Rothstein and Terry Lugston.
Good morning, Board. My name is Matthew Rothstein, Deputy County Administrative Officer, and it's my pleasure to present this item this morning. And as you'll see here, Terry Logston, our Chief Climate Resiliency Officer, is likewise here and will be able to respond to any questions that you have once the presentation has concluded. As you're aware, repeated and compounding wildfire events, extreme drought conditions, and groundwater depletion have led to widespread tree mortality in the state of California and in Lake County specifically. In 2019, the United States Forest Service estimated 1,000 Lake County acres were afflicted by tree mortality, and the estimated number of dead trees was 3,000. By 2022, however, those estimates had reached 31,000 acres and 590,000 dead trees. To be clear, this is in Lake County alone. 22,000 of those trees sit along county roadways and rights of way. many miles of which are critical arteries and evacuation routes for our communities. And in response to that, on May 3, 2022, your board adopted Resolution 2022-61, which was a proclamation of the existence of a local emergency due to pervasive tree mortality. As your board is aware, unprecedented storms of 2023 temporarily lessened drought conditions, but they also demonstrated the vulnerability of county rights-of-way to obstruction from downed trees. Removal of the 22,000 or more, that's a growing number of hazard trees that threaten public infrastructure and public safety, is clearly an urgent priority and well beyond the capacity of the county to fund through local resources. Understanding what state and federal supports can be available, therefore, is critical to our ability to respond. In the time since your board's proclamation, Supervisor Pyska and staff have coordinated with Cal OES, the Governor's Office of External Affairs, MGE, and other local, state, and federal partners to evaluate the magnitude of the situation and potential for funding. California Disaster Assistance Act, CDAA, enabled funding, as you are aware, is provided on a 75 to 25% reimbursement basis. So if we submit costs, we can expect under normal conditions that 75% of those costs would be reimbursed, to be clear. And the county is responsible for securing funding for all of those costs up front and then waiting for reimbursement for a period of time. With your board's approval and support, staff requested USDA Forest Service Urban and Community Forestry Inflation Reduction Act funding on June 1, 2023, which could potentially cover a portion at least of the local match requirement. Unfortunately, to date, no funding decision has been communicated on that by USDA. To substantially mitigate tree mortality, significant funding will be needed. With many other routes having been explored, I want to draw particular attention today to Lake County's letter requesting waiver of the 25% local match requirement. That will be submitted to Director Ward and is discretionary among the executive staff at Cal OES and with gubernatorial support potentially. That's really pretty critical to our being able to respond in a meaningful way to tree mortality in Lake County, and we'll continue to seek the governor's support for that letter. And as you will have seen, all required supportive documentation for the application was attached to this agenda item today. There were quite a number of documents. And on review and consultation with County Office of Emergency Services, Public Works, and Disaster Finance partners, staff finds that the following board actions will support submittal of the request that we're placing today. Those include approve submittal of all required and supportive documentation to Cal OES's Public Assistance Division pursuant to the California Disaster Assistance Act, collectively constituting Lake County's formal request for assistance to mitigate pervasive tree mortality. Authorize our CAO, Susan Parker, as authorized agent for Lake County in this request for assistance, providing required county assurances. Authorize Auditor Controller Genevieve Harrington as a secondary authorized agent as consistent with Forms Cal OES 130 and OES FPD 012. Authorize the following as additional approved contacts: Scott DeLeon, Public Works Director, Stephen L. Carter Jr., Assistant County Administrative Officer, and Terry Logston, our Chief Climate Resiliency Officer. And as previously mentioned, approve the letter to Director Ward of Cal OES requesting waiver of the 25% local match requirement, and authorize Chair Pyska to sign that letter on your board's behalf. To be clear, with today's item, we're submitting a request for assistance to the state. There are no contracts associated with this. We're not agreeing to any particular pricing for the tree removal services, for example. What we have done is define the most urgent priority, which is removal of the dead and dying trees from county roadways and evacuation routes. And we're providing the necessary documentation to seek the state's support pursuant to the Disaster Assistance Act. Documents have been prepared for this application in consistency with past successful applications from other counties. And I want to acknowledge that a lot of work has gone into this to get us to this point, quite a lot of work. And we really could not have gotten this far without the tremendous leadership of Chair Pyska, who has really become a regional leader and statewide leader in this effort, and also our CAO, Susan Parker. and the collaboration and thought partnership of many others, including our Public Works Director, Scott DeLeon, Emergency Services Manager, Leah Sadale, our contractors with MGE, and partners with Lake County Resource Conservation District, including Kevin Soland, our forester, and our Auditor Controller, Genevieve Harrington, and her Disaster Finance Fiscal Manager, Dakota Hockett. All of those people have been absolutely essential, and I apologize if I'm forgetting anyone. And we'll look to Terry and Supervisor Pyska to fill in any blanks. And I also want to especially thank Terry Logston, our Chief Climate Resiliency Officer. You'll know she's been here since early December, and her dedication since arriving here to ensuring all the pieces of this complicated puzzle came into form in the best available manner has been, truly remarkable and worthy of your board's understanding and recognition. So we look forward, that concludes this presentation, and we look forward to any questions your board has and look forward to submitting this application to the state.
Did you have anything else to add, Terry? No. Well, I also want to thank Senator McGuire's office, who's been kind of with us along the way, attending so many meetings, and just there for general backup, and hopefully will help us continue to carry this forward. So do we have questions from the board? Supervisor Sabatier.
Yeah, just a few things. Appreciate all this information. I feel like our ask gets overpowered by what's too obvious in the letter, because what stands out to me are the bullets, and the bullets to speak to way more than what we're asking for. It speaks about 31,000 acres. We want to make a point that there's a problem, right? So that's why those bullet points are there. But then underneath, it says there are at least 22,000 dead trees along. I feel like we need to highlight that, like bold it, because we don't want it to get lost that we're not asking to take care of 590,000 trees, or else that's like asking $2 billion from the state and say, please waive the 25%, right? Like, I want to make sure that it's easy for the state to find the specifics, where obviously that would potentially be $88 million, and then 25% is being asked to be waived. So I think something of that effect needs to happen to make sure that we're highlighting the specifics, not highlighting the worst case scenario of getting everything taken care of. And there's a couple of other things. You mentioned the USDA. I would say because of the week that Chair Pyska and I just had in Austin at the NACO conference, we met with I have his card right here, Director of State Operations, so he oversees all the state directors for USDA rural development programs. We were with him, I would say, at least 2 of the 5 days, and he was also at our lunch table that we had on special seating that we were provided. And so I would say reach out again and see if that personal contact helps out. He talked about there's 70 programs. As long as what you're asking us is legal, we'll figure out a way to make it work, and I believe I can quote him on that. And I would say let's use that personal contact that we made to see if we can get a different response from USDA. Then I have another question. So this is big money, right? $88 million, 25%, so we're looking at like $22 million or something like that. I believe we've put some money aside either in ARPA or in cannabis taxes. I'm just wondering if we tell them, hey, we have $500,000 right now to match. We're not asking for you to give us a blank, clean slate of zero. We're putting in zero. You're going to give us the full 25% waiver. What does that look like within our letter if we say, hey, we have some money right now. This is what we can afford to provide. We're not asking to just give us everything. We're trying to pitch in where we can. Does that really make for a different reaction when this is received at Cal OES versus we've got nothing, we're asking for everything? So those are my questions.
So a couple things to respond to. We can only do this for the 22,000. So, I mean, we can bold it. And at the end of the day, it has to be within our, around our infrastructure. So I think that is just generally known in our letter. As far as the Inflation Reduction Act funding, that still has a 50% match. So yes, we want to get that, but yes, we still need this waiver to even cut down on that 50% match. And then, what was your third point?
about putting some money up front and saying that we've allocated.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's really necessary. To be clear, this waiver request, we don't know anything about this process. When the person managing the program came up here in May of 2022 to explain how the program runs, and he had been running the program for 10 years, there was no mention of a waiver. He retired, and then we had a call with his manager, who has been overseeing the program since its inception. He casually mentioned a waiver could be possible. We've done the research, we've never found it. Senator McGuire's office never heard of it. No, it was never mentioned. So we're kind of in new territory with this waiver request. The match was legislated previously in 2015. We can't get it legislated again, so this is a way to just see what will happen. I kind of hesitate to see how much we have to get started, because how this program operates is you just draw a circle, like we have this polygon here. We're going to start working there, and we just submit as we go. And you know, there's a certain amount of standing dead trees in that polygon now. We know it's going to grow, but that's the flexibility in the program, is that you just get started. You start in one area, you work around. By the time you get to the other side, there's probably more trees and you got to start again. So it is an unknown amount, and there's an understanding with this application that it is an unknown amount. So that's my response, but I don't know if either of you have anything else to add.
I do have just one addition, and that's that while we haven't seen a waiver request being approved, that was a step that some other counties took in 2016, which was a precursor to the state saying in 2018 we need a CAL FIRE program to come alongside counties that are struggling. So having that documentation in place could be an essential step to making sure that the issue is known and documented. And then if there is some, future possibility of state funding to come alongside that isn't necessarily the full waiver, or if there, it also, this will be submitted to staff with the agency that have discretion to make a thoughtful response. So we're not necessarily anticipating that we'll get, quote, a blank check or something like that, but we are expecting that this is a step in the process that will help us get the maximum possible state support.
Yeah. Oh, and one more thing to add. My conversations with Supervisor Smallcomb from Mariposa County, we've been working very closely on this for close to 2 years. And she mentioned, because I said we were about to do this and submit, and she said, it's really interesting. We heard back from Cal OES about the cleanup from the Oak Fire, and they only have a 10% match. And she couldn't figure out why. She was showing me the emails, and I thought, well, that's probably a waiver that no one's really talking about or knows about, that they kind of just got it without even requesting. So if we can at least get this down to 10%, maybe even 15%, but any reduction in that 25% is going to be helpful to us. And then if and when we do hear about the Inflation Reduction Act funding, our match for that gets smaller too.
And just to finish off, I know you've put a lot more work into this than I have, so your knowledge is going to be greater, so I'm okay with moving forward. I just know with the Middle Creek Restoration Project, since we allocated $800,000 to the design process, that was a question that we received from the Army Corps engineer, and once they knew and saw the proof that we had that money allocated, now we're meeting weekly with the Army Corps to help move the project along. So sometimes it could help and grease up the wheels a little bit more. So just wanted to bring that up, but happy to move forward.
Yeah, I think it's a completely different scenario. Any other questions? Supervisor Green.
Thanks. Appreciate the hard work that went into this. I just want to turn to the one-pager briefly. Just for clarity, there's a map on there. I think that's the polygon you were just referencing. So I'm guessing that's the proposed work area, but I don't see a caption or something that explains that. There's also a reference to the map on the reverse. And on a one-pager, it's going to be hard to show a map on the reverse unless it's actually a two-pager. So that was one question, just what is that polygon shape on the one-pager? Can that be clarified if that's a proposed work area or an area of focus for the funding request? And so that's just a real simple question. The other real simple comment is just I'm a recovering editor, so every time I see the word exponentially, I want to say no, it's geometrically. So I appreciate that tree mortality is spreading very rapidly, but I highly doubt it's an exponential rate of spread. So, so the question on the polygon.
Yeah, so on the polygon, that's clarified really in the hazard tree removal plan, that's the area of focus. It is on the one-pager, and my apologies if the copy of the one-pager that was attached did not include the map on the reverse. We do have a version that includes the map on the reverse. We can make sure that that's the version that's attached with the application. But yes, the hazard tree removal plan clarifies that the polygon area, which is here on page 12 of the hazard tree removal plan, is the area of focus.
Okay. Then maybe just adding a caption or a one-line little thing under that map would clarify it for its repurposing on the one-pager.
Great. Yeah,
Other
thank you
than
for that feedback.
It looks like a good package, very supportive of this. Let's see what happens.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Just a moment. You can come up to the podium after this.
Michael Wegner. First, I'd like to commend Chair Pyska for taking this on. What a huge endeavor and super duper important for everybody. I'm sure anybody who's traveled around Lake County has seen this is an issue and definitely concerning and slightly scary, right?
Very scary.
Something I wanted to bring up, and I don't know if this is the proper way to go about it, but as we remove these dead trees, the potential to replant those trees at the same time would seem like maybe we can combine the two together and perhaps find some funding for the replanting of the trees from the state so that maybe you could gain money or momentum for your project kind of indirectly. At the same time, when we talk about money development and we talk about swaths of trees, living or dead, it brings into my mind carbon credits and the ability to generate carbon credits from land and trees. So maybe you could offset some of the cost by getting the carbon credits for the living trees in land that we do have. I'm not sure who would know, but maybe somebody here does know if that land does have, you know, all the land is not dead, right? There's swaths of dead trees, but there's also a large amount of living trees that we could carbon credit now to fund your project. Just something I wanted to point out, and if anybody would like to speak to me about it, I'd be happy to assist.
Sure. So appreciate your comments. This program is only for protecting infrastructure, so it's only for the dead trees that could fall on our roads or our county buildings or our parks. So it's just really getting that right-of-way cleared. So this will not go out on the general landscape at all. And a lot of the areas are our county right-of-ways. We do have to work with some landowners to get, you know, it's probably going to be about 100 feet, maybe 200 feet from the road. So it's not going out on the landscape.
Okay.
So if that property owner wants to do a replanting program, you know, that would be up to them. But this is such a massive program, we have to stay specifically within the guidelines.
Focused on what you're doing.
Correct. We do have a lot of other things going on with large landowners that want to do forest health work. I think that's maybe where your comments would align better.
Okay, Ms. Bayeska, maybe, thank you for addressing it. Maybe you and I could talk about that in the future.
Of course.
Thank you.
Hi, Yolanda Chavez. I'm really glad I came today because that's great what you're working on. I just had a question about, you know, all the homeowners associations around the lake, and they have people, you know, on their property and on their properties, they have old trees that are dead, and they can't afford to cut them down. Any funding or anyone to call to see what we can do about that?
Yes. So again, that is outside of the scope of this particular program, which is just for protecting infrastructure. But we are working on those programs. We've been applying for funding, for homeowner assistance, for, you know, grant work. Clerk has done a lot of this over the last couple of years in the really, in the areas where it's kind of the epicenter of beetle kill. We're working really closely with PG&E to make sure that they're on their infrastructure. We have a tree mortality task force. We meet monthly. It's a agency-to-agency meeting. We're having our meeting on this Friday. So there's a lot. This is a bigger problem than just, keeping our roads clear. We've got to keep our communities safe. We've got to harden our communities. We've got to have our fire breaks around them. We can't have standing dead trees around. So this is a massive, massive problem, and this is just one piece of it.
Okay, thank you.
Come on up. Oh, but I'll just add one other thing. If you would like to join the Fire Safe Council, Lake County Fire Safe Council, or Lake County Community Risk Reduction Authority meetings, those are two places where we talk about this a lot, that are public meetings.
Okay.
Lake County Community Risk Reduction Authority, we meet the third Monday of the month at 3 o'clock. That moves, so you check our county website for the agenda and location. And then the Fire Safe Council, Lake County Fire Safe Council meeting is a Zoom meeting on the second Thursday at 10 a.m. Of course.
Yes, it's probably a smaller issue than what we're looking at, but I'm here because first of all,
Your name, please?
Paulette Allen with D&P Poles. I'm the contractor.
Okay.
And I'm here because right now I have a permit that's been in the building department for almost 4.5 months. Very simple layout. And I've been building here in Sonoma County for 30 years, here for 24 years in Mendocino County. It is taking me 3 to 4 to 5 months to get a permit. And swimming pool permits are costing $5,000.
I'm sorry, this is about swimming pools?
Yes.
Okay, so this discussion item is about our package that we're sending to the
Okay, so I
state
just thought
for
that,
tree mortality.
so did we already miss our turn? Okay,
Yeah.
for today to
Yes.
represent?
Public input was at 9:06.
Oh, we didn't know that.
Yeah,
We were here, but we didn't know it was our turn. We didn't know we could stand up.
yeah. We have to adhere to our
So
agenda.
when is the next board meeting?
Our next board meeting will be next Tuesday, and 9:06 public input would be the
Okay,
time.
great. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you. Do we have anybody else in the chambers or the Zoom room that would like to comment on this item? And I'm not seeing any in either place, so I will bring it back to the board. I don't know if Matthew or Terry have anything further to add.
If I have the corrections correctly, what on the the waiver letter, I'm going to switch the sentences per Supervisor Sabatier's suggestion and make the second sentence the first sentence so that it's directly under that link, and then to add the polygon to the one pager on the back.
Okay, isn't it already on the back?
The polygon is on the one pager, but what we're needing to do is make sure that we have the broader vegetation losses map on the back, and also Supervisor Green asked for a caption on the front describing what the polygon is, or to make sure at least on the front of the one pager that it's clear what that polygon is.
Okay,
And we're happy to do those.
okay. Supervisor Crandall?
I just had a question, and I was going to ask it, but we got into public input. Worst case scenario is they charge us the 25%, and that's that. We submit, and is it kind of like one of those gimmies, or is it like we're crossing our fingers regardless?
I don't want to use the word gimme, but the program is set up.
Sorry.
And no, it's okay. The disaster is still open, and so this is the process to get the funding.
High chance.
Yeah, and if we don't get any assistance with the match, then we'll just work through the money that we've earmarked, and we'll go as far as we can go.
Okay. So it's not going to hurt to ask for a waiver because they'll
No.
just say, nope, but you have to charge this amount or whatever. Okay.
Right, so what we're just trying to make the case, and what I've been making the case up and down the state is, we can't afford the match, the money that we have won't go very far. And we can't protect our communities without further assistance.
All right.
Okay?
I'll motion to approve submittal of all required and supportive documentation to Cal OES Public Assistance Division pursuant to the California Disaster Assistance Act, collectively constituting Lake County's formal request for assistance to mitigate pervasive tree mortality with corrections and additions? Or do I have to do that at a different one?
With corrections?
If I'm understanding it correctly, I believe it's, yeah, would that be on the first and fifth bullet point as far as the corrections being made?
So my understanding is that it's the waiver letter that has the content that Supervisor
Oh, okay.
Spatier
That's
was
the last-
referencing.
yeah.
So if we can just make sure that the waiver letter is as amended once we get to that action item.
Got it. Okay, so then I don't need to add additions and corrections, just solely ending at mitigated pervasive tree mortality. You want me to read it off again? I can.
I do believe there were some changes to the one-pager that were described by Ms. Logston.
Yes, and that's an advocacy document that we've prepared, not a board-approved document historically.
Because it
So I don't
says
know the
here,
strictly
submittal of
required,
all supportive documentation. So just want to see if we need to make the amendment with the supportive documentation as presented.
Could be, yes. So on that first bullet point, it would be as amended, if there are changes to be made with the document.
As amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Madam Chair, I authorize Susan Parker, CAO, as authorized agent for Lake County in this request for assistance, providing required county assurances.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Madam Chair, I authorize Auditor Controller Genevieve Harrington as secondary authorized agent as consistent with Forms Cal OES 130 and OES FPD 012.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Madam Chair, I move to authorize the following as additional approved contacts: Scott DeLeon, Public Works Director; Stephen L. Carter Jr., Assistant County Administrative Officer; and Terry Logston, Chief Climate Resiliency Officer. And, well, yeah, that ends the
Second.
motion, right?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the letter to Director Ward requesting waiver of 25% local match requirement and authorize Chair Pyska to sign with amendments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Good luck.
thank you. Yes. Okay, thank you both so much. So been a big lift. Okay, we can do 5.2. Approve agreement between the County of Lake and New Life Health Authority, DBA New Life LLC, for substance use disorder outpatient drug-free services, intensive outpatient treatment services, and narcotic treatment program services for fiscal year 2022-23 for 2021-22 services in the amount of $95,662.58, and authorize the board chair to sign. And we have Elise Jones, our Deputy Director.
Yes, good morning, Board. Elise Jones, thank you for your consideration of this agreement.
We could just ask him what he wants. That way.
Thank you.
So to me, the item itself is pretty simple to understand via the memo. There were some extra costs that were found out later on. We're trying to rectify that and pay our bills. This is from 21-22. That fiscal year financially has been closed. We're trying to pay it off in the 22-23, which we're working on closing that fiscal year. But within the context of the contract, I just had a few things that kind of had some red flags, had conversation with both Ms. Jones, Mr. Carter, and Mr. Guentavano, and if it works out, which I think it does, at least for the departments, and if it works for the board, under Section 3, under compensation, because the term up above it doesn't have any specific dates of the terms of the services. That's where I got confused. Typically, a contract says what the service will be and when those services will be provided. This is a special case. So if we can add in the compensation, the first line, Contractor has been selected by county to provide the services described hereunder in Exhibit A titled Scope of Services. If we can add after that, in fiscal year 21-22, then at least that tells us the compensation will be for those services within that time frame that we are paying for. And that way, when I read this as a singular contract, I can understand what the services are and what the timeline of those services are, rather than before it was a little vague. And that's the only thing that I'm requesting.
Easy work.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone from the public? Not seeing anyone in Zoom. I'll bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the agreement between the County of Lake and New Life Health Authority, DBA New Life LLC, for substance use disorder outpatient drug-free services, intensive outpatient treatment services, and narcotic treatment program services for the fiscal year 2022-23 for 2021-22 services in the amount of $95,662.58, and authorize the board chair to sign as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
And do I need to add in with the condition of the, if you can help me with that, please?
Yes, with the approval, with the board's approval conditioned upon the contractor's execution of the agreement as amended.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right, we are just before 10 o'clock. Thank you. So we'll do our 7.2 item, consideration to schedule a meeting, a special meeting to interview public defender candidates in closed session. And I will turn this over to CAO Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, I'm going to ask that we schedule a special meeting for the interviews for the Chief Public Defender. We have listed 2 possible dates, and I just need to hear from the board the preferred date for interviews. I hope to spread them over 2 days. We'll have possibly 2 on Tuesday, and then the remaining 3 on the date that you select.
We're starting at 9 a.m.?
Yes.
I think at both days I'd have to move a lot around, but maybe Friday? Do you think we'll be done by 2 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. Then Friday works better for me.
Friday doesn't work for me.
Okay.
Where we have to go for a meeting with the congressman.
Then
in Napa.
that,
Yeah.
okay, there you go. Then we'll move around the ARPA meeting that we have scheduled for the
Yeah, I was going
morning
to
of
ask
the
about the
3rd.
ARPA meeting, because that's 9:30, I think it is.
8:30.
I guess my line to the other side of the screen moved towards 9:30. Okay, gotcha, 8:30.
We'll reschedule it either for another day or later that day, if that is what the...
Later that day will work if
Okay.
we're just clearing the deck.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll figure it out for Thursday.
Okay, any other comments? Anyone in the Zoom room? Okay, bring it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to schedule a special meeting to interview public defender candidates in closed session on Thursday, August 3rd at 9 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you, board.
we've got our special meeting. And we can do 7.3, consideration of the following advisory board appointments. We have a mental health board appointment, and we have a heritage commission appointment. So we've got, for mental health, we still have 3 vacancies, and it looks like a reappointment of Kendra Wygand. And any comments about Kendra for reappointment? Okay, anyone from the public? Not seeing any.
And are you good with that?
Yeah, she's in my district, of course.
Okay. And Madam Chair, if you're looking for a motion, I move to approve Kendra Wygand, I apologize, to the Mental Health Board.
I believe it's Wiegand, and I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Then Heritage Commission, where we still have 6 vacancies, and this applicant is Joan Kramer.
And spoke with Ms. Kramer to join the Heritage Commission, so obviously I'm in approval of her joining.
Okay. Any comments from the public? No one in Zoom? All right, bringing it back to the board for action.
Madam Chair, I move to approve Joan Kramer to the Heritage Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, 10 o'clock. We will do our 10 a.m. item, 6.5, consideration of amendment number 2 to the agreement between the County of Lake and Sunrise Special Services Foundation, increasing the total compensation for the agreement to $460,800 for fiscal year 2022-23 and 2023-24, and authorize the board chair to sign. And once again, we have our Deputy Director, Elise Jones.
I apologize for forgetting that you have a boot. I should have just asked you to maybe sit back rather than walk back.
Madam Chair,
Made me feel bad.
commonly I would have recused myself from this subject, but I don't feel I have a conflict any longer, so
Okay,
I will sit in on it.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Got to catch my breath from the strenuous work, sorry. Okay. Good morning, Board. Elise Jones, Deputy Director of Administration. I'm pleased to bring a contract forward for continued sheltering services for our county. So the Lake County Continuum of Care convened a meeting last week and voted to refly the request for proposals that had been issued for these temporary sheltering services using homeless housing and assistance program funds, but also voted to extend the contract with Sunrise for these services so as not to have a break in services while we retool and reissue and reevaluate the RFP for those services.
Okay. Questions, comments from the board? Do you have something, Supervisor Spatier?
Yes.
Okay.
My pen was stuck in my hand. So there are 2 things that I would like to see changed on here, and I'm wondering if Ms. Jones also has something else to bring us. I know it was mentioned in the email about an update to the budget.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much, Supervisors. So I do have an updated budget that was provided after the item was submitted from Sunrise. And I wasn't quite sure the best way. Should I read it aloud or how? I would appreciate some direction in how to present the updated budget.
Want to share it on the screen?
Let me email it to Johanna really quick. Thank you so much.
And while she's doing that, if I can speak to the changes that I would like to see. So as we can see on the section 2 for the term, it speaks to all the way to terminate on October 24th, 2023. However, in section 1.1, which is the contractor's responsibilities, it states that they would be able to use juvenile hall until August 23rd rather than October 24th, so I'd like to change that date. And on description of services, providing a warming center operation through August 23rd, again, I'd like to change that to October 24th to match the term so that it's 90 days and not 30 days. That would be the only changes that I'm requesting.
Thank you.
Okay. So here we have the budget, the updated budget.
This is the updated proposed budget. As you can see, it still falls within the total funding allocation per month. They have just simply adjusted line items.
Which line items did you adjust?
Every single one of them, I believe, is adjusted.
Okay. Okay.
So if you don't mind, I'm just going to go through it. Looks like originally the last budget that we had received was $1,000 for utilities. It's down to $200 per month. I struggle with that one. That's a big building. $200 a month is more of a monthly utility for a normal household, not a place with 34 beds. And a commercial kitchen, so I'm kind of struggling where that comes from. I don't believe anybody's paying for utilities other than Sunrise.
What are the bills now?
I haven't personally viewed any bills. We have recently reviewed our fiscal manager conducted an audit where they reviewed the receipts and against what the expenditures were, and did find that there was significant variance within the items, which is reflected in the proposed modifications here. So I would have to say that this is based on the contractor's evaluation of their utility costs, and I would be unable to comment further as to how they made that determination.
And so the one that stands out, and I appreciate the information, the one that stands out to me is the admin. The last budget was 10%, which to me is kind of the norm. You get a grant, you take 10% off the top, that pays for the administrative portion of administering the grant, managing the grant, reporting on the grant, and now it's up to 15%. So we see a reduction in utilities, we see a reduction in food, we see a reduction in vehicle fuel. That's concerning to me. I've already, we've heard, now whether it's take it with a grain of salt or not, but we've heard that there has been issues as of late potentially with getting food at the shelter. Here it's decreasing by 33% from 3,000 to 2,000. I know what my bill looks like for a household of four, $2,000 for a house of 34 rooms, potentially more than one in one room. Granted, donations are definitely occurring, and I'm thankful for those donations to the shelter. But so I already had some hesitance with this contract. Just for transparency, I voted no at the COC to continue this. We have seen some issues with our contractor in the sense of meeting the responsibilities of the contractor within the contract. I brought some of those issues in the previous extension to the contract. I wanted to be transparent about what those issues were. And I still have those concerns, very much so, about our contractor meeting their responsibilities to provide a safe and clean shelter for those that need it the most. This is a very vulnerable population. And it's one of those really difficult decisions where if I say no to this, that means people who currently have a roof over their head, which I believe last count was 18 or maybe in the 20s rather than 34 or 40 like it was during the wintertime, that is rude, that is taking away a very lower part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs for any human being. But I also feel saying yes to this is saying Lake County is okay with being good enough, rather than setting a standard of what we should expect our contractors to meet. And I'm tired of the idea of good enough. Here, we're getting a budget that has yet to be revised by the COC. The COC approved specific things to be brought back here. So I guess the question to you would be, are we utilizing county funds or COC funds for this? I'm really not comfortable with admin taking an extra 5% and taking away from some very essential necessities for a shelter. So I guess I have that question, but at this moment in time, this new budget adds to more of my concerns of how we're dealing with our shelter. And I don't want to shut down the shelter, but I can't say yes to this.
What is the reason for the increase in the admin?
That's a great question. So I think, just to jump over a few things and get to a solution, if that's okay, I'd like to propose that this board would approve an admin cost of 10%. And I would like to propose that the difference between 7,000, well, it's 15%, and 10% is $1,880. So it's between 7,000 and 5,120, okay. And so I'd like to propose that 880 is added into the utilities line for a total of 1,080 for utilities, which I agree may be more appropriate, reflecting on my own household of 5. And I can also propose that the $1,000 goes into the food or other supplies costs. And we can take that back to the contractor. I think it's a small change, but I think it may be enough to make us feel more comfortable. And as you said, Supervisor, preserving life and dignity is super important. And I would also like the board to consider viewing this process of addressing our unhoused needs through an iterative lens. So yes, could it be better? And will it be better in the future? Absolutely, as we further refine our business practices and further work with our community to bolster those services. But this is what we have. So that's my proposal.
Okay, and then what about managing the contract requirements?
Yes, so we are managing the contract requirements. It does happen within the Lake County Continuum of Care meetings. It did happen during the contractor selection process with the executive committee where contractors' performance as regards various contractual items was evaluated and as part of the determination in the RFP process. And so our department does take on the burden administratively for monitoring the contract financially, but also to ensure that they do their homeless management information system or HMIS entries, ensure that people are connected to the coordinated entry system, so hopefully they can step out of being unhoused. So we do monitor to those items. And we are also receiving significant technical assistance from HCD, Housing and Community Development Commission, and also through the HHAP. I believe that sometimes they subcontract for TA services for various grants, and we're definitely taking every opportunity for that.
Okay. Supervisor Green.
Yeah, thank you. A couple concerns. I suppose we can tweak the line items, but my concerns have to do with process. So this budget, as it was reviewed by, I assume, the executive committee of COC and recommended for approval. No COC general membership?
The COC has not seen this budget. That was provided to them after the fact.
The original that was on the attachment,
That's in the
yes,
yes, but
not the new one.
thank you.
So what did COC see?
What is in the contract in the attachment of the agenda item, which is not this.
Yeah, see, remember she said she had an updated budget. That's why we put it up on the screen, because it's not in the package.
Okay, so COC has seen something. We are now seeing an updated something today that COC didn't see. Your concerns are duly noted. When you were on the COC sitting in that capacity, you voted no on this. Now you're sitting on this board getting ready to take another vote on this. So this is not the day to have this discussion. But the relationship of COC and the county and this contract extension and the contracts issued before where BH and the county essentially are acting as lead agency, air quotes, because that's one term, but there's many other terms that can be used in COC Landia, including collaborative applicant, HMS, lead. Anyway, there's a long story of COC and how it's evolved into what it is at this point, and I can't second guess that today because it's not on the agenda. But I do have concerns with the process where we bring something to COC for their buy-in as a quasi-independent group or not quasi-independent, we'll see. And then we take another bite at the apple here today, in this case relying on information that COC didn't see, so couldn't have any opportunity to comment or make their own tweaks to this. I'm open to making the budget amendments. The question would be, can we approve the contract today without having the contractor here to agree to the amendments? Can we kick the can down the road? Because this current contract ends on the 31st. So if the goal is to avoid an interruption in services, which I strongly support, I don't think we need to be haggling over the contract at this point. It's kind of a yes or no vote to me. But if there is time to confer with the Sunrise on whether the changes proposed here today are going to be acceptable and we can bang that out, that's okay, but I don't see them here. So I guess the question would be, if we tweak this outside of what's already been reviewed and approved by COC or recommended for approval by COC, do we actually have time to finish that haggling and get this thing signed before the current contract extension expires?
So if I can respond to some of that, if you look at the attachments that are on this item, you'll see the last amendment, and it'll say through July 23rd. We knew that the process would give us a little bit of an awkward moment where there's 2 days where we're outside of the contract already. We know that behavioral health has the ability to spend a certain amount on their own without approval from the county. So those 2 days would be covered if today we just said shut down. But the idea was to bring it to us as soon as possible so that we can look at the potential for the extension. Again, my goal today is not to shut down the shelter. I think that human lives need that shelter to be there. But I just am unwilling. This is a perfect example and reason as to why I'm unwilling to keep moving forward for 90 days. I wouldn't mind a 30-day extension so that we could figure out what else we're going to do, because there is too many red flags happening at that shelter. And I don't want to be good enough. I want to make sure we're changing lives and providing the services required. Now I'm just going to repeat myself, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
And if I may just quickly respond to your response, 30 days is not enough. If we're going to extend it all, we need that full 90 days. There are red flags about shelter operations. To me, the red flags about COC and its status vis-a-vis the county, and I need some time to address that, and I don't think we can get that addressed in 30 days.
Yes.
I would just like to offer that in the budget that is submitted with the current contract, the admin is at 10%, so that is something the COC has already approved, and the shuffling between the line items is, to me, somewhat insubstantial, and so that's just what I would like to offer as a thought.
Yep.
I would definitely go with what was offered originally, not this one, is what I would go with.
Okay, and we have Stephen Carter.
Good morning, Board. Stephen Carter, Interim Behavioral Health Director for another week or so. Elise just hit on what I was going to recommend, was that utilize the budget that is in the current agreement before you today, and then if your board feels like there should be some adjustments made, we can make the amendment and come back with an amended contract. And the reason for that is if we approve the old budget now, there's no gap in service, and we can bring the amendment forward before the next time they bill.
Okay. Supervisor Crandall.
Was this, is this solely an extension, or was there another process of like opening it up for an RFP or something along those lines?
Stephen, could you, or at least do you want to talk about how the RFP process went, or Stephen, either one of you?
Elise can speak to that.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that. So this, we did have an RFP and we received, I believe, 3 different proposals for that. And the board reviewed those proposals and decided that none of them were sufficient, and therefore decided to go out with another RFP, which should be ready for the executive committee to view by the end of this week at the latest. And so that, of course, will be approved and reviewed, of course, by Director Carter and whoever else may want to provide input. And so we are continuing to go out to RFP and to bid for these services. So there was one, and I guess you could say it was failed, but we're bringing this forward to ensure that there's continuity of services, and we're reissuing the next RFP.
I just want to say I appreciate your on-the-fly problem-solving recently, just with this project, this situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Supervisor Spatier.
Yeah, I'll just say, since the executive committee meeting is a public meeting, we reviewed all 3. The one who scored the highest is the contractor we're looking to extend with, but it was not approved to provide a 3-year contract, which is what we were looking to do, because those flags exist and those concerns exist. I do want to speak about those flags do equate to liability potentially for the County of Lake. It is our building. We've had issues at the building where we've had code enforcement have to deal with it, or our public services have to deal with things. There have been internal issues within the agents, within the contractor. Those are not things that we can control, but that have been brought to our attention. And part of that included the pay that I brought up last time as well. That's definitely been rectified. I've reviewed the last of the submissions for payments that have been submitted to us, but those are still things that are embarrassing, things that are publicly known, and to continue with this entity rather than having a greater conversation. We are going to go through the RFP process, but how much longer are we going to keep going with an agency that we know is putting us at risk and creating potential liability? So I'm okay with 30 days, with bringing back a Board of Supervisor conversation and saying, what are we going to do in between this 30-day and the RFP process? We're restarting. We're saying it's okay for the people they're serving. We're saying it's okay for the tax dollars they're receiving, and we're saying it's good enough. And I'm done with good enough. So
Right, but is 30 days going to be enough time to?
we need to think outside of the box because this RFP process is not working for us, and there is some opportunities and options. We just need to bring it to the board and discuss it.
Okay.
There's someone online.
Yeah, I'm going to open this up for public input, and we've got Dr. Ryan Ava. I may have said that right. If you want to unmute, state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Ryan Ava. I'm the Executive Director for Sunrise Foundation. Thank you for this opportunity. And first, I'd like to say that I agree with the amendments as far as the organization goes. I can attest to the to the agreement. We can do those amendments. And and I apologize, I'm not familiar with your names, but to the supervisor's comments, that is not good enough. I understand that, and I hear you. I have been with the organization for a little over a month, possibly, and we have done significant changes. And as you know, I personally not only agree with you, but I'm also a person that I'm not good enough. Good enough is not good enough, I guess that's what I should say. So we want to excel. And on that note, we have taken steps to rectify the situation and the concerns that was brought to my attention. One of them was to replace the current or previous director of operations and reducing the salary from $7,000 to $5,000, which I think that's what the position should be at, and I agree with you. And the other part of it is to basically put a systemized process in place and make the process more efficient. Now, one of the other suggestions that I had, and we're trying to implement it, and as you can see on the item list, there are discounts that we can apply for our utilities that we weren't currently utilizing, because again, we are a nonprofit organization, part of these low-income programs and everything else we need to utilize. Also, we were spending a lot of money on food. Yes, donations are great, but there are different programs that we can utilize to reduce those costs. And that's part of the reason that you see that on the budget, that the food cost has been reduced because, and again, keep in mind that, these changes take time. And as we go through this process and putting procedures and policies in place, we also have to be mindful of some trial and errors as we go through to figure out. And there's a lot of trainings that need to be done at the staff level and also with our new director. I have personally taken on task of basically mentoring Chris, and I think he has some raw potential there. But at the same time, leadership takes not only talent but also experience, as well as good mentorship. I was fortunate enough to have those in my years, and that being said, and I'm a clinical psychologist by training, so I understand mental health, I understand leadership, I understand what goes behind all those things. So what I'm asking the boards to consider, please, is that 30 days is not enough. Extension of 90 days, I think is appropriate. B, also to recognize the efforts that the foundation has done in that short amount of time to rectify those problems that has brought up to our attention previously. One of those big changes was bringing me on board and basically putting me in charge of seeing what's going on and making those changes. So I understand, I empathize, and I agree with you that good enough is no longer good enough, and I thrive for excellence. So that being said, I agree with the changes. We can do that, but give us some time as we're working through this process and making this place an excellent place of service. And I believe 90 days is appropriate, and to give everyone enough time to move forward and make the appropriate changes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ava. I did give you more than three minutes because.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I will open it up for other public comment, and because you're the contractor, I did give you more time, but just a reminder to the public that it is 3 minutes for public input. I'm not seeing any other hands in the Zoom room, and I'm wondering if there's anyone in the chambers, and we do have someone in the chambers.
Good morning, Chair and Board. My name is Brad Rasmussen. I'm Police Chief in Lakeport. I'd like to speak in favor of extending this emergency contract while the RFPs are being worked on. I personally don't think 30 days is going to get it there. I can't disagree with Supervisor Sabatier's comments about some of the concerns, but what I'd like to focus on is if we were to close that facility, it's going to be detrimental to the people that are using it and also the community. Over the past 6 months, in my daily work with the homeless on the streets of Lakeport, where many of the residents come from, I interact with them and see the impacts. And the last time that we had a situation like this where the shelter closed, it was detrimental, and we saw some severe impacts to the people and the community. So while I agree there's concerns, I have concerns of my own, but I think we need to keep it going and then focus on, the RFPs and get something more permanent in place. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board. Supervisor Sabatier.
I got a question. Trying to find how I can get into a comfort zone with this. Would it be possible to come back within 2 weeks? And I'm not looking solely at behavioral health. I think public health, social services. Who can we place as employees in the facility to ensure that we are going to get what we need and we're dealing with the concerns? I know we stop by every Friday and we have a little quick check-in, but that's like 30 minutes or an hour out of all of that time. I would feel more comfortable. I don't want to staff the whole thing because that's not going to be possible. We have so many other people that we need to touch every single day. But I'd like to come back with what is an opportunity for us to make sure that we're there so that we're dealing with the problems right away, so we can say, take out the garbage, please, which is one of the issues that we've had multiple times where we've had to deal with that. Or dealing with are we making sure that we're asking people if they have any symptoms before they walk in so we can make sure to separate them into the right wings or things like that. I would be more comfortable with saying yes today with the original budget that was submitted for the 90 days. If, yes, in 2 weeks we can come back and say, here are some proposals on how we can do that. I don't want to force anybody in a situation because that conversation hasn't happened, but I would feel more comfortable if that was a possibility and a conversation we have to try and make sure that we are watching our liability and minimizing our risk, because we just had a chief of police from Lakeport. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Rasmussen. Said both your first and last name together. If there's concerns from a law enforcement side, I have concerns from the Board of Supervisors side. We obviously need to figure out a way to not say, it's going to be fine for 90 days, but how are we going to do more? And if that's something that everybody can agree in consensus to bring that back in 2 weeks for that conversation, then I can say yes to an extension to 90 days with the original budget that was offered with the date changes.
So we have a 90-day contract, which I think we need because I think 30 days is too short, and we want to make sure that we've got coverage while we're going through this RFP process. But we do have termination available within that 30 days. And speaking with Interim Director Carter, I think it's 14 days. So there is ability to make changes within the 90-day contract. But I do think it is appropriate to kind of come back in a couple of weeks with a plan that shows us how the contract's going to be managed. And I don't know that we need to devote staff at this time, but you tell us the best way that you're going to be managing it so that we don't have these liability concerns going forward.
Duly noted, and I'd be happy to come back in a couple of weeks with that.
I know that dealing with those experiencing homelessness seems to have fallen in the hands of behavioral health, but that's not your problem, that's our problem. And so I hope that we can get more departments involved in the conversation than just you coming back to us in a couple of weeks with, here's what we can do. That's what I would hope. It's not just you sitting in front of us, but others as well to say, these are the options. That's a very heavy weight to lift as one department. We have entire communities, entire states trying to solve this, and nobody is solving this. So I just want to make sure you don't feel like that burden. I want to spread that burden to as many of us because it's our problem to solve.
Supervisor Green.
It's like Dr. Doolittle here. There's a push me, pull you going on. On the one hand, we have a contract extension, which very clearly calls out Sunrise as an independent contractor, and yet we want to put staff on site to monitor. We want to change line items on the fly and stuff like that. So we have to choose as a board, and we have to choose as a COC, this freestanding entity that is not standing free in any meaningful way from behavioral health. What do we want to be? Do we want to be on-site managers and reduce our risk to the point that it's non-existent? Then we better be going in a different plan than doing an RFP for an independent contractor. If we're going to stick with the independent contractor model, as we should, to reduce our liability, we put it on the contractor. But if we have both, an independent contractor, and then we go in trying to micromanage their operations day to day, we are not reducing our liability. We're just meddling in a contract. And going back to close enough isn't good anymore, same thing with COC. We have some work to do with COC to establish its organizational footing so that everyone is very clear where COC begins, where behavioral health ends, where the county ends, where the contractor is. And it's nobody's fault that we have spent years trying to bootstrap COC into whatever it is right now, but we haven't finished the work, at least not from the county side. You know, I know COC has gone through any number of iterations of its bylaws where we're going to
But
go.
let's stay on our agenda.
Okay, well, I would just like us to do the 3-month extension without throwing everything in the kitchen sink at it. I do intend to bring an item back in 2 weeks so we can talk about COC. If you want to bring back an item on the same agenda so we can talk about supplemental staffing for the interim, I'm certainly open to that, if that gets you your comfort level. But I need a comfort level that this process is going to work before we start sending out RFPs again. If we are going to send out RFPs again, I'd just sooner be on the county side than the COC side at this point. So lots to talk about, but to stick to the item, let's get this contract extension done. And we have a lot to talk about mitigating our risks, whether through a contractor, whether through some staffing, whether through some combination thereof. And part of the things we need to fix is COC.
So real quick, the Board of Supervisors will never fix the COC. The COC needs to review the COC because it is not a Board of Supervisor agency or committee. And two, more along the lines of what Chair Pyska offered, which is to come back in a couple of weeks on managing this contract and ensuring that the outcomes and the policies approved within the contract are being followed. That is more vague than anything specific, and I prefer it to be vague so that staff can come with creative thinking and creative solutions to make sure that we are doing this correctly. If that is approved by consensus of the board, then I am okay with moving forward with the 90 days, but all alone, knowing the red flags and ignoring the fact that those red flags still exist in our liability, I am not comfortable with. So that additional makes me comfortable.
Okay, and we've got our interim director, Stephen Carter. Have final comments?
I was going to say, well, Bruno kind of wrapped it up, but for a comfort level, the 14-day written notice from the county to cancel the agreement should put a little bit of comfort in there, because if something drastic does happen, we can move relatively quickly. And I do agree with coming back in 2 weeks with some more information, not just from behavioral health, on how we can monitor and make sure things are working properly.
Okay, so we have consensus for the coming back in 2 weeks and getting a plan,
Yes.
and we're going to leave it very open for you and your creativity. And let's move forward with approving the contract. And
There's nothing further. I move to approve amendment number 2 to the agreement between the County of Lake and Sunrise Special Services Foundation, increasing the total compensation under the agreement to $460,800 for fiscal years 2022-23 and 23-24, and authorize the board chair to sign.
okay, for clarity, is that with the budget presented today? That has the changes that we've discussed?
With the amendments for the dates, because the dates stopped on August 23rd, we want to make sure to extend those to October 24th, or else it's a 30-day, not a 90-day. So those amendments.
The budget as it was presented in the contract was fine. So the budget in here is not being amended, but the dates are?
Yes.
With the dates as suggested for amendment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. And it's 10:36. We will take a break and come back at 10:45. Oh, I'm sorry, one moment. CAO Parker?
Yes, Madam Chair. We do have a time gap to 11:15, our next public hearing.
Yeah.
With the board's guidance, we could go into closed session, take a 5-minute break, come back, or 10-minute break.
Sure.
Get prepared to go into closed session, then come back into public session for the 11:15 and the 11:30.
Okay, so we will come back in 10 minutes and go into closed session, and then come back for our 11:15 item. Okay, welcome back. We are going to move into closed session, and then we'll come back out. We're going to look at 8.1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, FERC project number 77, Potter Valley Hydroelectric Project, and 8.2, conference with real party negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, property APN 013-05604, 16540, State Highway 175, Cobb, California, negotiating parties. A, county negotiators L. Ewing, Susan Parker, Stephen Carter, and Robert Vardengenga. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. And with that, we'll move into closed session and come back out for public, to continue public session.